This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer. It's 1 p.m. here in New York. Wherever you're watching from around the world, thanks very much for joining us. We begin with breaking news. More trouble for the fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The chairman and ranking member of a House panel says it appears Flynn failed to follow the law and did not properly disclose payments from foreign governments.
As a former military officer, you simply cannot take money from Russia, Turkey, or anybody else. And it appears as if he did take that money. It was inappropriate, and there are repercussions for the violation of law.
Right now, we cannot discuss the contents of the documents that we just saw because they are indeed classified. But we can say this. They are extremely troubling. We have concerns, and I believe these documents should be declassified to the fullest extent possible without compromising sources and methods.
Let's bring in our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto, and our senior White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim Sciutto, the lawmakers, they viewed these classified documents, but they also say the White House declined to provide other documents requested as part of the investigation. Walk us through these late-breaking developments.
Well, Wolf, I'll tell you, to see the top Republican and Democrat there from the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, Elijah Cummings, is significant and frankly worrisome for Michael Flynn. They've seen the documents here. At issue is $45,000 that Flynn was paid by RT. This is a Russian-controlled, really a Kremlin-controlled television network seen by the U.S., by the State Department as, in effect, government propaganda. He took that money. You and our viewers will probably remember the picture of him sitting at a banquet in Moscow next to the Russian President Vladimir Putin when he went to give this speech. That's one thing. Didn't ask permission to give it. That's key. He's a retired general, needed to do so from the Army, the Defense Department. But two, and this is crucial, did not report the money that he was paid for that speech on a security clearance form for the White House when he was picked as the National Security Advisor. That's not just frowned upon, that is potentially illegal, and that's what you hear from both Chaffetz and Cummings there. Now, they've asked the White House for documents to further corroborate this, but the White House referring them to the Defense Department, not cooperating on other issues. But when you have a Republican and a Democrat there from the House Oversight Committee pushing for this, talking about possible breaking of the law by Flynn, that's significant. We've not seen the end of this case.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Jim Acosta, the White House, is pushing back a bit on the suggestion that they're refusing to provide documents to this committee. What are you hearing from inside the Trump administration?
That's right, Wolf. The White House is saying it's impossible for them to turn over these documents to the House Oversight Committee because they don't have them. And so they are referring the Oversight Committee to the relevant agencies, and that process apparently is now underway. They're not disputing that this letter was sent from the White House over to the committee. They acknowledge that they did send that letter. We should also point out that General Flynn's attorney did put out a statement on this. We can put that up on screen. It says, as has been previously been reported, General Flynn briefed the Defense Intelligence Agency, a component agency of DOD, extensively regarding the RT, that Russia television speaking event trip before and after the trip, and he answered any questions that were posed by DIA concerning the trip during those briefings. So you also have the attorney for Michael Flynn pushing back on that as well, Wolf. But this just goes to show you how problematic the selection of General Flynn has been for President Trump. When he selected Mike Flynn for National Security Advisor, this has been a drip, drip, drip process in terms of getting to the bottom of just what Michael Flynn was up to when he was having these discussions with Russian officials during the campaign, during the transition, and so on. And keep in mind, Wolf, there's just this messy component to all of this, and that during the campaign, and you'll recall this, Wolf, Michael Flynn led those chants of lock her up. He did so during campaign rallies and so on, and now you have the heads of the House Oversight Committee, both Democrat and Republican, saying that Michael Flynn did not comply with the law. And so, you know, Democrats are just going to have a field day with this for just as long as they can. Wolf? Yeah, but as Jim Sciutto points out, it's not just Elijah Cummings, the ranking Democrat. It's the chairman of this Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, as well. They appeared together. They were making these very strong statements. Jim Sciutto, the former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, and the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, they're now set to testify a second time, May 8th, on Russian interference in the
2016 presidential election. They're going to be testifying on May 8th before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Earlier, they're both testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. But Senator Lindsey Graham, he's the chairman of this subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. What is he saying about Yates's testimony? This could be very significant.
Senator Graham is saying he's interested in a couple of things. One, he's interested in why the former Trump campaign National Security Advisor Carter Page was the subject of a FISA warrant requested by the FBI. He wants to know what was behind that, where that may lead. That's key to him. And keep in mind now, you will have the former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, the former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, likely to testify before three committees now, because you have the Senate and the House Intelligence Committees. They're doing their own investigation. Senate hasn't released their list yet, but it's pretty certain you're going to have Clapper and Yates on that list. And now you have this subcommittee from Judiciary, Lindsey Graham's pursuit as well. So it shows you that you got three tracks here going, almost competing tracks, talking to the same people. Where does this lead? Clearly, the investigation is going to go on for some time. Senator Graham says he's also interested in Michael Flynn, his ties to Russia, and this particular issue. Sally Yates had said her concern was that he might be blackmailable by Russia because of things he did in the past. We're not sure what that is. And Senator Graham wants to know exactly why that is. He wants to pursue it through his subcommittee as well.
And as you know, based on what Sally Yates told the White House, Flynn was dismissed by the President of the United States only a month or so on the job as National Security Advisor. Jim Sciutto, Jim Acosta, thanks for your reporting. Lots of developments to discuss with our panel. We have our CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton, CNN political commentator Errol Lewis, he's the political anchor for Spectrum News, and Shelby Holliday, politics and business reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Colonel, first to you. You worked with General Flynn on the Joint Staff back, in 2008, 2009. So what's your reaction to the news that he may have not followed the law when he was seeking security clearances to become the President's National Security Advisor, and apparently did not notify anyone at the time those security clearances that he received, about $45,000 from RT, Russian television?
Well, Wolf, my reaction is supreme disappointment. When you work for somebody and you've been around them for quite some time, you want them to uphold the highest standards. You were held to those standards yourself, and you expect your seniors to do the same thing. So I would characterize it as supreme disappointment. I am not only concerned about this, but it does look to me as if there is a lot more that, as Jim Sciutto and Jim Acosta mentioned, a lot more to this than what we currently see.
Colonel, when you worked with him, what was your impression of Michael Flynn? Because you had a close working relationship with him. And did you think he was qualified to become the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States?
General Flynn was a really good tactician. He was supremely capable when it came to special operations style missions, and basically he had done those things extremely well. But when it came to the bigger picture, all the kinds of things that one deals with on a strategic basis at the Pentagon and beyond, and obviously in the White House, I did not think that he was the right individual to be the National Security Advisor to the President. And that's not including the political aspect of what he did during the campaign, which is something that I thought was unprecedented. When you look at the other types of national security advisors that have come from a military background, somebody like Brent Scowcroft or Colin Powell, completely different people with a very set worldview, one that allowed them to think strategically and act strategically, which is exactly what you want in that role. We did not see that with General Flynn, and I did not think that he was in that mold.
Yeah, he clearly was no Colin Powell or Brent Scowcroft. Errol, how much of a problem is Flynn for the White House right now? He's gone. He was dismissed, but there's still potentially a political problem.
Well, that's right. Every time you talk about Flynn, every time we talk about Flynn, the White House, I'm sure, goes crazy, in part because it does a lot. It causes a lot of problems all at the same time. It strains their relationship with the Republican leadership on Capitol Hill, with whom they have to cut all kinds of other deals. And every time these various subcommittees parties start coming up with more information, it strains those relationships. It casts a cloud of legitimacy, frankly, over the administration that has kind of made the president personally kind of nuts. You know, he tweets about it, he calls it fake news, he doesn't want us talking about it, but we have to talk about it because it's extremely important. And then finally, you know, as we total up the pros and cons of the first 100 days, you give him the pros, you give the president the pros, the Neil Gorsuch nomination that went through successfully. But, you know, on the other side of the ledger is Mike Flynn.
You know, and I assume, Shelby, the White House is not very happy. All these hearings now, the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, the Intelligence Committee in the Senate and the House, as well as the ongoing FBI criminal investigation on the Russia involvement in the presidential election. They're not happy about all this open testimony that's about to take place.
No, it's certainly a thorn in the president's side, and it's also not the story the president wants leading up to his big 100-day mark. Michael Flynn represents a bigger problem this White House has with staffing. We still have plenty of staff jobs unfilled, appointees unconfirmed at this point. Either Donald Trump's team wasn't ready to run the government, maybe they were surprised, or they just didn't take the vetting process seriously. But this does represent a big overall problem, and Wilbur Ross was talking this morning to CNBC saying he has all of these bilateral trade agreements he wants to negotiate. That's a huge promise Donald Trump made on the campaign trail. But does he have the manpower? He struggled to answer that question. You have to have lots of people in place to get these things moving.
Yeah, there are hundreds and hundreds of jobs that have still not yet been filled.
Exactly. It's a big problem for the White House. Not good in the first 100 days. 100 days is a long time.
Everybody stand by. There's more coming up. Still ahead, more threats from North Korea as the United States parks a nuclear submarine in the neighborhood. Also, the president's daughter is jeered a bit in Germany as she stands up for her dad and his history with women. We're going to hear from Ivanka Trump and take you live to Berlin. That's coming up next.